So what happened? In the previous learnings, we looked at what XJS provides developers. That learning effectively set the stage for us to begin using the framework, and that's precisely what we'll do today. Today we'll begin to understand how the pieces of XJS work together, fit together, as we start to develop our own application, and we're using critical pieces of the framework, such as the class loader. For today, it's more introductory. We won't be going too much into detail about how things operate. So we'll do that the next lesson. So if you find anything useful in here, please leave me an abo, a comment, or a thumbs up. And okay, let's start. So here we go. I prepared a couple of things. So the first thing is I created a new application. If you want to see in the future how this works again and again and again, just leave me a message and I'll cover that every time. For today, this might be the last time. Otherwise, I will just go over Sencha generate app. I'm using the ext folder in here. My namespace, I want this to be PhoneBook PB because I don't always want to write PhoneBook. That's why I use just PB. And I want this to be located in my apps folder within PhoneBook. And I just want to use modern. So I already created it in here, as you can see. And the first thing I would like to talk about is the app.js. There are a lot of information in here which you have to understand so that you can really use XJS to its best. So the first thing we see in here is that this one, let me just check if you can hear me. Yeah, you should be able to hear me and you should see me. Okay, cool. So the first thing is this extend in here. The extend says this should be extending PB application, and you'll find this within the app folder, application, and here it's defined as PB app. The next time we talk more about the class loader and things like that, so then we will cover how extend really works. But for today, let's just go with this PB application. If I split it to the right, you can see here it's defined and here it's used. Okay, so the second is the namespace. The namespace is whenever you define a new file, here you can see PB and it's exactly the namespace. And the same goes for if I open the list in here. It always starts with PB. So the namespace, if we take a look in our app.json, it says class path is app. Let me move this over here so that we get a better view of this. So whenever I type PB, it adds the class path to look up for view, the folder view. And that basically means PhoneBook App. So PB means my folder app. So it's this one. And then it searches for view main list. So that's what this PB, this namespace defines. It defines my name of the application, my namespace of the application, and in conjunction with the app.json, it knows where to look for the files. So next is the requires. Again, oh, I should have left this open, the app.json. Okay, the requires says, okay, I will load all files that come within the namespace. So all the files with the namespace PB, so in the folder PhoneBook, will be available throughout the application. As soon as we talk about the, let's just take a look in here, it says requires PB store personal. So the store personal has to be defined before anything happens in here. And this is what this requires us. The requires in the app.js says, now I'm going a step further. I don't want to always say require this for me, just require all the files within the PhoneBook app folder and define them. And this is what this requires for the X application is for, so for the app.js is for. The requires in here is completely different. This one is a list of required packages. And packages, we already know, are located down here. In our local folder base, we already created this. We will use this starting next lesson. So if you require a different package, you have to require it inside the app.json. If you require files from within your application, your current application, you require it inside either the app.js by defining get me all files, or just certain files from in the requires from in the ViewController and so on. We will, for today, we will work with these requires within the different files, and we won't be using the global requires from within here. Just make sure that you understand that this requires will be only used during your production build. As long as you're working with your development build, all files out of the box are available. But during the production build process, it will gather all the files, put them in a single file, and ship that. And whatever is not inside that shipped version is not available. So if you didn't place files in the requires, it won't be shipped and can't be found. So, and that's a very, very often problem I see in the forum. Okay, but we'll go over and over this requires again and again. So if you didn't understand it yet, don't worry, we will cover that again and again. Our main view. So right away after the launch of the application, we want to show something. And this is what the main view defines. In here it defines PB, and we remember PB means my PhoneBook app folder, as we saw in here with the class path. And then inside the view main. So my main view will be launched out of the box, created out of the box. As long as you only say xdefine, it's only a definition, but we want to create it. More about that next lesson. We want to create it right away, and that's where we go with this main view, and we want to create it in here. Now, there are more things to be found in here. There is a launch method, and I just place in here a debugger so that we can find out when it's launched. And the second one is on before launch. And again, this is a function, and these are very important if you want to launch your application. But the first thing you would like to do is figure out, is the user logged in? Something else, whatever you would like to do before the main view is shown, you might want to go with the onBeforeLaunch. And the launch process, as soon as all my definitions are set, it will run the launch. But we'll take a look into that. So first things first, we have to create our own local server. And for that, we are switching. Currently, I'm in the X workspace folder. I'm switching to CD apps. And inside apps, I'm switching to my PhoneBook folder, which is my new application. And in here I go Sencha app watch. This will create our initial development build. If we create a new application, this will create the development build. It will start building a CSS file from the SCSS files. And it will launch a server on port 1841. Okay, so let's switch over to my local host. And let me first start my DevTools, otherwise the debugger won't launch. And if you're interested in seeing over and over again how I debug and go into more details for different stuff, please mention it in the comments. And now let's start our application. So in here is my phone book. And now you can see there's no view yet. But we are in our onBeforeLaunch method. Now we go with F8. And, oh, missed something. So this is something, let me just remove this and this so you can see what we want to see. Let me restart this. So this is what I meant to have. Now let me add this one, the launch method. And you can see the view is already here. And then my launch method starts. But I wanted to go into my onBeforeLaunch method. So for that, we have to go for this.callParent arguments. And let me rerun this. Now you can see we're again in the onBeforeLaunch. I press F10, F11 to go for this call parent. In here, I'm pressing F10, F10, F11, and I'm getting to the onBeforeLaunch method, which is always triggered by XJS. So this is an existing method from XJS. And this one is critical for XJS because what it does is it says init my main view. So this one generates from our main view, which we defined in here, pb view main. And this init main view creates this view. If we are not going for the parent method, it won't run all this. It will never run. So whenever you use methods that already exists from XJS, you have to say this.callParent to run the original version of the method. in here, what you could do is you could say, okay, I'm doing an Ajax call, and while the Ajax call is running, I'm running the original version. Or right after running the original version, I could do something. Though, if you take a look in here, it says launch is an empty function, and within onBeforeLaunch, after creating the main view, it tries to call the launch method. So if you anyways want to do something after creating the main view, you could go for this one. And because the launch method is an empty function, which is basically just an empty function, you don't have to call this.callParent in the launch method. So for now, we will stop using this. Next time we will go into more detail for that. For now, what we want to do in here is just say console log launching. Okay, let's see what we get. I'm rerunning it. It seems it didn't save this. You always can see in here it detects some changes, and I forgot to save it. So now it changed, I saved my changes, and we get in here launching. Isn't that awesome? So we just created our own app. We understood most of the stuff in here, and we even added 2 really important methods to our knowledge. So from now on, you don't only have to use the main view in here, but you can also do additional commands. So now what we want to do now is, let me just move this over here. We want to use our main view, and our main view should be a container. It should be the home of our list, which we will create, telephone list. And we want to show from a selected item in the list, we want to show the details. And everything should be in the HBox layout. We will understand what this means right after. Then we want to have the list itself, and we want to have the details. Further, we need a store and a model. A model contains the definition. So let me just see what I wrote down. This class will define your model data model for the coworker, and provide coworker list and coworker detail widget with the data. Okay, so this one defines the structure of our data, and the store holds all the data in a single place. Let's see how this works. So first of all, I guess to use data, we have somehow to get data. I already generated 500 of these in here, so you can see it's a long file. But how did I get that? Okay, let me again close some files in here and get up the information. I'm using the JSON generator. It's json-generator.com, and in there I created my own list, how I want the data to be generated, and just head over to that page, and there's a very good help. You can always use let's just head over there, shall we? If you want to see something, please just write it to the chat and I can go for that. So in here you can see out of the box we get a lot of information. I don't want these information in here. I want to use my own. Copy, paste, and there's a trailing comma, and within help you can find all the definitions I'm using in here. So if I'm going for index, you can see in here index, and that's how you can easily find out what you want to use. I was going for name as a surname, last name, first name, gender, date of birth. So I generated a date of birth and I wanted them to be somehow acceptable. So I said start 1970 and 2010, because I don't want to have any users as co-workers, which are younger than 11, I guess. That's what I posted in here. And my city should be a number, a random number between 1,000 and 10,000. That's for German cities, so that's why I added that in here. And a city name, which should be random. A street with an integer. My street should be somehow between 0 and should be 1, I guess. There won't be a 0 house number. So between 1 and 500. So not too long of a street, not too short of a street. A company name, email is always firstname.lastname.at company.com. A phone number, this is American style, so you will see that in my data. And I want to have a country. So that's basically what I'm using in here for my data. So let me open that again. So you can see in here, I created an ID, an index. This ID most likely is something that you will get. I created an index just to go for numbers, which are very small. A name, which is the last name, first name, gender, and as I said, a date of birth, which matches what I wanted, and so on. So this is basically what I created as data for today. So with these data, I just added them to Simlet. Simlet is kind of a wording in XJS for fake data, and to make it a bit more real for us, I named it coworker.get. We'll get to the path later. So first of all, I would like to create a list. And we already have a list in here, so I'm going for the list which we already have. Let me just try to figure out what the exact name I have to use in here, what I'm extending. I'm using a class which already kind of is what I want, and I would just want to extend it and add a couple of my personal things, like adding a title. So let's take a look in here. And we're going for docs, and we're going for the 7.5 docs. And this is already set to modern, and I'm going for list. Oh, let me just try to increase the size in here. Going for a list, and it right away says, let me increase this so that we see more. Okay, cool. It says X data view list. And if you want to know upfront what it's like, you can just take a look in the documentation, and it says 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the items, and this is kind of a template. Shall we use that? Let's go for the template. First of all, I want to extend this, so I'm going in here and say my list shall set. It seems I didn't copy it. So copy, paste. So now I want to go with all this, copy, and I'm just adding in here. And again, I missed to copy. It seems like I'm, oh, that copy. And let's go over what everything is about. So I want to create my own list xtype. You in here, the xtype, this is the xtype if you're creating it and you want to use the original data view list. That's the xtype name. I want to use for myself, it's my main list. And the exactly same meaning has alias widget.mainList. Now we will go into more detail about what alias, widget, and so on means. For now, let's just leave it like this. And I will explain this as soon as we are going to use the xtype. So we don't have to use the full screen, but in here, let's just go for, I already wrote myself a bit more information. Let me just go, because the data, we already have data. You remember in here, we do have data. So we are going for this one. Item template. A list consists of different items which are positioned underneath each other. So the template for that shall be a coworker. The class name is the CSS class name. And now, if you place things in XJS, you typically go for single upper quotes. And inside that, you can see here are the double quotes. Because if I would place in here a single quote again, then this would be my string. And this would be a variable or something. It would be broken definitely. So that's why you always want to use single quotes outside. And as soon as you have anything inside that's quoted, you use double quotes. So inside these curly brackets, you replace from the record which we get the data name. We'll come back to this in a bit. For now, just believe that we always get the first name, last name with a space in between, and altogether our list shall be 150 pixels. I want to use a store, which we do not have yet. So let's leave that like that. And whenever someone taps on an item, so if we go in this example, this is wonderful. You can go in here and just add in here listeners. And in here, inside the help documentation, you can say child tab, function, and we're just going for an alert. And it says hi. So if I run this now and I click something, we get this alert. And that's something you get out of the box. In most examples, you can add your own stuff in here just to check out how it's working. So child tab on list item click. Since we haven't implemented it yet, let's leave it like this. So we want to do add store, to do add listener. This is what we still have to do. Now, the first thing I would like to do is create a store. Okay, so for a store, we go in here and we name this. I would like to go, I'm just reusing the original stuff in here. So I'm going in here with co-workers as a plural. I'm typically going for the plural because we will create a model definition for a single set. And this is a collection of these sets, so it's plural for me. And this is a store. We will go into more details how this, why it's a store and so on later on. And I want to name it coworkers. And my model, we will create this. So in here, to do, create a model. And we leave it like that. But we already know it should be coworker, singular. And the items come from a certain position. So I would like to have in here an Ajax call. And this Ajax call should call the URL. And this should be inside my application, Simlet. Sorry, missed this. Simlet slash coworker slash get. And I want to have the reader as a JSON because I added in here, this is a JSON. So I want this to be JSON without any root property. Now let's see, we have to, as you already know, we're just defining it in here. Now we need to create it. And for that, I would like to add to my list a view model. I could go for the main view and add the store in here, but let me just copy. We don't have to. So we will create a new list model in here, which is a new file, and I name it list model.js. And in here I say xdefine. And again, this is the first thing is always my namespace, PB. The next thing is where to find it. So PB points to app. I have to go for view main. So let's go for view main. And in here, this should be list model. Now I want to define it as being a model, a view model. And therefore, I just extend it so that all the logic is out of the box available. I extend it from xapp ViewModel. And then I'm coming up with my own definition. Alias. And this one has the namespace ViewModel. I will explain this in a bit. ViewModel. And I want this to be my main list. Why? Main list. Let's take a look. We already have the list here. Let me move this to the right. So my xtype. I said before I could also say alias widget.mainList. And you can see in here alias ViewModel main list. So the first item in here is a kind of a sub namespace. And if I add in here, I want to have a view model. And I want this to be type main list. It will say, okay, create me a view model for this list. And the type looks up inside the sub namespace view model for main list. That's why I typically always have main list in here, main list in here. And as soon as we create a controller, we want to have main list there too, so that all our main list sub namespaces thingies go for the same name. So let me remove the alias in here. Alias, widget, and xtype are the same. So we are saying to our list, you now have your own view model. Go for main list. Inside here, we can define data. We can define stores. And we can define formulas. Today we will only go for stores right now. So I want to have my store to be coworkers. now we already created a store. Let me just rename this. Seems to be wrong, right? In here we should go with coworkers. Coworkers. Okay. So my IDE tries to refactor it and to be very, very careful about it. That's why it runs through all this. Now it says, yeah, do refactor. I don't want to care about that. So now we have this coworkers with coworkers, and inside our list model, we can say, create me a store of the type coworkers. I already said that before with this type in here. This type always says, take a look in the sub namespace. In here it's ViewModel. In here it's stores. So it looks for something like store coworkers. And we created that in here. Sorry for this. In here. And this one has the alias store coworkers. That's why we can say in here, create me a store type coworkers. Now it will get all the definition from here. We could go in here and add my definition from here right inside here, and I would not have to go for this coworkers. But as we want to have a specific place where to look up for stores, and we do not want to pollute our view model too much, I prefer to go with this coworker store stuff here instead of adding everything in here. It might be in some cases that you have the proxy inside your model. I will explain to you later in another video why I would not go for that. But you could place this inside the model and you're good to go. But then it would be fine just to have in here model, and then you would define in here pb PhoneBook dot model dot coworker. That would be fine if we're going with that. But for today, let's go. We already created the store. We created the store here, and now we can go with type coworkers, and everything is set. Now we do not need for now the data. I always go with the same structure: first data, stores, and then formulas for readability reason. And let me just delete this. So this is my view model inside my list. Inside the view model, I have the coworkers. So now we can bind the store. This data view list, whenever you use a grid or a list, you have to tell the list or the grid or the dropdown, where's the store? Where are the data I want to use? And that's been done by adding a binding. A binding is always when you want to use something that's inside the view model. And I go for store, so it looks up in here. And that should be coworkers, as in here. And to use that, you add a string with curly brackets and the name of the store. So by now, we already kind of, do we still have some to-dos? Let me just look up, find to-do. So we want to create a model. There is something. So inside our store, we still have to create a model. So we already have the folder in here. Let's go for personal base. rename this for coworker. Again, my IDE tries to figure out, is there something spooky? No, it's not, it's working. So now we have in here the definition of the data which will come. I'm not going with this one. I want really to know which kind of data we're waiting for. So let's go for, oh, I have to, no, that's it. URL, let me, oh, here. Just copy paste my fields, copy and paste my fields. So we will get whatever is name is the type of data, the name of the data. So let me just reopen the get in here. You can see we do have the index, and that's defined with name. The type, we could go without the type string. That would be equal good. This will run through some logic and make sure whatever we get, it could be a number, it will make sure that at the end it's a string. But for the index, I definitely want to use an integer. I don't want to have a string. That's why I'm placing it here. Make the index, make sure the index is always an integer. So if I would add something like this, it would be a string, but the type integer functionality would make it an integer. The same goes for the date. My date has a certain format, and I want this to be automatically formatted into my date of birth. That's why I'm adding here, this is a date, and it will be a date afterwards, a real JavaScript date. Everything else is just a string. As you can see in here, it's just a string. So my definition for these fields is, fields means each entry in here is a field. And it always starts with the name, and then it continues to try to make it a certain type of, so integer, string, date, Boolean, whatever. Now that we defined coworker, the coworker model, we can go back to our coworkers store and tell the store all the data have to be in a certain format. And here you will find the format. Here you will find where to grab it from. Here you find in the reader how to read the incoming data. So by now we should have the coworker store, which we use in here. And now let's try to figure out, where do we use the list? So in my main view, adding it over here, in my main view, we do not want to have a tab panel. Let's just go for a panel. Let's take a look what a panel is. So in here, we're going to search for panel. It says X panel, as you just saw. Let's just give it, in here it says X panel. And yeah, the panel comes with title, icon, CLS icon, and so on. So if you run the example in here, you can see this is my header of a container which contains more items. So that's exactly what I want. I want to get away here. So I want to not go with this. So we were talking about a title. Let's add coworkers as a title. And I place title so that we easily know this is our title. Now we don't want to use any of these. but we want to use our own item. And now we are going for something that's called xtype main list. And as you already saw, we defined something like an xtype and we named it main list. So now at this point, we tell the mainView, once you get created, create an item inside which has the xtype main list, and that creates this list inside here. In here, it's only a definition. Once the main view gets created, it's creating the real item. So we do not want a controller or a view model for now. Let's just get rid of that for now. Okay, so we do not need these requires in here, and we only have a single item. Therefore, I'm going with a layout of bit, which means whatever space the main view gets will be available for the children. And we talked about that during the last lesson. We went for the kitchen sink, the layouts, and in there was something that was called fit layout. So it will give space for the children, whatever the parent has to give. And that's exactly what we want here. We want that we only have a list in here, and we want the list to have the space available, though we will only add a width of 150. Launching comes from our app.js. And here it says launching. Missing favicon. Okay, next time I'll have a favicon. We do have the title coworkers. And now it seems, let me just right click in here and search. It says it has a list. So do we already have the data loaded? That's the first question, isn't it? Let's go in here for network. Let me just scroll in here so that's easier to read. So in here, it didn't load any data. See, whenever you're going for a store, let me just go in here for store. That's a typical problem. You will definitely run into that one. And if you go here for auto load, it will show that it defaults to undefined, which is false. But we want, as soon as the store gets created, we want to load the data. Otherwise, we would have to go, dear store, please load. So let's go for the store. And in here, let's say auto load true. Now with that, we should get in here some data. It's loading the data, we got the store, and in here you can see we get all the different items. So the first thing we tried to do works. Now we have created our list. The width seems not to work yet. Let's go for that later. To do, set the width. So it loads our store, otherwise we wouldn't get the data in here. We get the first name and the last name. Which one is probably a good one? Mara Dixon. Dixon definitely is the last name, and Mara is the first name. Lopez could be a last name. It just is. Let's just take a look at the sorting in here. Is there any sorting? B, E, M, D, no. Last name H, M, B, R, no. It's not sorted. So shall we add a sorter in here? Let's go for our store. Sorting doesn't happen in the list, neither in a grid or somewhere else. The grid, the list is only there to show the data in the order given by the store. If we want to store them, to sort them, we have to add a sorter. And with that sorter, let's go here, take a look for sorter. Sorters, here we go, sorters, which can be an exutil sorter or an object. So let's take a look at the initial set of the sorter. In here you'll find more information. Sorters level. So let's go in here and say sorters should be first name. And let's try to figure out if that works. Rerun. Oh, it's working. So we get all the A's, then we get the B's, and so on. So we created our first sorter. But now I would like to have filter. So going back for our store, and let's look for filter. Filter. And it says filters in here. And there are so many different ways to go with filters. Let's go again, array of exutil filter. And here we get a wonderful example how to use a filter. So I just copy this, going back just to see that our filter has to be an array. So let's add in here filters. And we want to add the property. We know the property shall be first name. Let's go only for first name now. The value should be, I want to have the value AL. Whenever AL is inside, I want to use that. And the operator, let me add the comma first. What's an operator? Let's take a look in the exutil filter. And in here, you can go for operator. And here you find all the different values. And I would like to have the like value. So whenever it's AL is contained inside, I want that to be a positive result. And I want to show that. So only values with AL as a first name, Alexander. You out of the box see that it's way shorter because already here it says Ballard, Dalton, Donaldson, and so on. So only stuff with AL inside is shown. By now we created a store which sorts and filters my values. So the list really only shows the values which are inside my store. So now we want to have a listener. And we said child tab. How do I get this child tab? Let's go for list again. In here, we're going for list. And the list, data view list, has a couple of events which are thrown. So the listeners define for which event we want to listen. Let me just check in here if I, oops. No, okay. Was just checking if there's anything inside the chat. Okay, so we were going for, what did I do now? In here, okay. So the listeners, yeah, we wanted to take a look for the events. If you go here for events, you can see all the events that are available. Don't go for the DE app, deprecated ones, because that would be item tab. But the item tab, if I click that, is deprecated. And down here it says, instead of using the deprecated one, after version 6.5, so starting 7, use child tab. And child tab is exactly what we want. So if I say in here, I have a listener with child tab. Let me just duplicate this, and go for a function in here right away, an inline function. Now we see in here, it says this location. So let's add in here, this is the list. Location, let's try to figure out what that is, shall we? So I'm just adding here a debugger. I run my application. I tap on an item, and I'm getting right into this debugger in here. Let me just make this bigger. Okay, now let's take a look what list is. List says, and the important information is typically what is the xtype. So I'm going here for the xtype, scrolling down, 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 and I find main list is the xtype. So I'm going back here, main list. So list is my created list. Now the next one would be location. Instead of typing location, I can hover here over the location and I see right away, oh, child, I get the child, which child has been pressed. But more important for me is not the item, the DOM element with the constructed item for XJS, but I'm going for more for the data. If I press here, I want to get all the data from align gates. And if I go here and I go for record, I can see that within data, I get align and the name gates. So this is the data, the full data set of align. And that's what we're trying to get now. Because we want, as soon as I press something, I want to show probably the street and stuff like that, the email address. So let's go here with this one and go for, I want to know, do I get more information? So another way of getting all these information is just typing arguments. And you can see I'm getting 3 arguments. The first was the list. The second was the location with all these sub items. And that's what we are looking for. So we are going for a console log location.record. That's what we want to see. Just, I will explain it in a bit. And in here I say get data. Let's rerun this. So if I press in here, we get the data of align gates. Now I'm pressing Ballot Bradshaw. Let me, Dalton Stark. Dalton Stark. Okay, so we get these information, which is pretty cool. Because we do get the street, we do get the email address, and that's what we are after right now. So instead of adding all these information in here, I want to use a view controller. The view controller, the controller overall, is the place where we want to run functionality that is triggered by the user. Let's try to get that. So first of all, we have to add a new file, and that file shall be listcontroller.js. So again, it's xdefine, and in the xdefine, again, namespace pb. We do not have to add the app folder. That's why we can go right with view main. And now the name is list controller. And now we want to define what this shall be. I want to have all the functionality from the standard view controller. Let's go for that. Extend xapp view controller. And I want this one to be alias controller main list. It's exactly it's exactly the same as before. It's main list again, and this time the sub namespace controller, because that way in here we can go with controller, and in here you just have to use a string. You can just use you may just use a string. For the view model, I will explain that probably way later. Please always go with an object type main list. In here, we're just going for the controller type main list. So now we added a controller to our list. And it's in here. Now, in the controller, we can go for on list item click function, and again in here we get list as the first one, and the second one is the location. And this on list item click, you probably already saw that in my list now, in my store. Where did I add it? I guess in my store. So the name which I just typed, you might already have seen it in here, child tab. So we no longer need this. And by adding a string to a listener event, it will automatically look up the controller assigned to the view and try to figure out this name in my controller. So now if I go in here, console log, let me now get a bit more into detail. So first of all, const. I want to have my record shall be location.record. And the specialty of a record is that you can get the data using a getter and a setter to set the data. So now we're going for console log record.get. Which one do we want to get? Let's get the street. To control this, to look if everything is working correctly, let's go with the name first, last name. So rerunning this and clicking the item, Monroe. Clicking it again, Merrill. So we're getting the record, and inside the record we are getting a certain model and a certain field. So now what we want to do is we want to save this somewhere so that we can show the data in the main view. And I want to do this by going, first of all, in here, saying my view model is this.get ViewModel. And I want to write to the ViewModel.set selected coworker, and the data shall be the record. Now, with this, I'm adding the data to the view model. Here we do have the view model. So to make sure no one in the company overrides my data and knows that I'm storing the data here, I'm going for data selected coworker. And initially I want this to be now, to be not set. So why do I write this? Let me just remove the console log. Why do I write this to my view model? And is this the correct view model? And how do view models work? We'll get to that. So we said in the beginning that we want to show a list, and besides we want to show the details of the selected item. And for that one, we're going here to my main view, and we already added this list. Now let me add another xtype FormPanel. What is a FormPanel? Let's just go here. FormPanel. FormPanel. The FormPanel is a collection of fields. So as you can see in here, FormPanel, and inside we have a text field, an email field, a password field, and so on. And that's exactly what we want. Let's just grab this, copy. And we want to have in here a form panel with items. And inside that, a text field. And the text field shall be name. And the label shall be name, email, stuff like that. But now we want to get the data from the view model. Let me move this over here. So we do have inside the selected coworker, whatever we clicked, the data for that. Here we do have the record now. And here we want to get the data. And if you remember from our list, we had a binding in here to our store. And this is how it looked like. So let me copy this and go over here and say, I want to bind the value. Whatever is written inside the text field is my value. And that one shall be the same formatting as my store binding. But we know that it is inside the selected coworker, and the name, the last name, shall be the name. So that seems to be easy. Let me just copy this and paste it for the other fields. Oh, password. We don't. Let me add here telephone number field. And this one shall be the, how did I name that? Now I can look up the name of my phone number, phone. I just named it phone. So this shall be phone. And the label should be phone. And I want to use here phone. And for the email, we were going for email. So I can add here email. Now, whenever I click anything in here, there's a data binding for the value of my text field to the selected worker's name. Let's try that. So I'm going for this one. Nothing happens. Oh, there's something wrong. Let me just scroll up. Cannot use bind config without a view model. Whenever you want to use bind, you have to have a view model. Oh, that's easy because we already had the view model here. Let's just go for this one. And as you can see, it's named main. So we can just go here for the view model. And again, please always use type. And the type was main. Now we do have view model, don't we? Let's take a look at it. I click, no error, but we don't see anything. That's because the main view contains the list. The list is a child, and the child has its own view model, which doesn't give the data to the parent. It gets the data from the parent. If the data are not available in its own view model, it will look for the parent's view model to figure out if the data is available there. Not up, there, no, and so on. But a parent will never look into the view model of a child. So now we do have the data in here, the record. Here is the record inside that. And it's not getting into my view model here. We need it in this child FormPanel here. So it would look up in the parent view model to find the information selected coworker, but it doesn't take a look down in the main list. So what we have to do is, instead of adding the data selected coworker in here, we have to add the selected data in our main model in here. So now what happens is that the list controller says, where's the view model? Okay, I have the view model. Set selected coworker the record. If it is not available in my own view model, take a look in the view model of my parent. Oh, there it is. It's in the main view model. Write it to there. If it can't find anywhere the selected coworker, it would write it to its own, as a new entry to its own view model. But because it's available in the parent, it will write the record to the correct location in my main view model. And therefore, now that the record is in here, this text field can look up. I don't have a view model. Take a look for the form. No, in here, oh yeah, there's a view model in my parent. And it will find the information. Now, let's go and try to figure out if this really works. And here we go. I don't have a phone number. This is strange, is it? Let's take a look why the phone number is not shown. So we have selected coworker phone. And my coworker says phone is a string. So, oh, it's a number field. So let's go for a text field in here too. It's not a number, so no, yes, everything is working. So because there is a definition that the phone is a string, and I defined here the number field, which has to be a number, and there's no number there, it shows nothing. So that was easy, wasn't it? Okay, let me take a look at what I prepared further to that. Create an output. Okay, so if you so far liked what you've seen, please leave me a thumbs up and a comment if you ever did that on your own, or if you found something like a FormPanel in your company's code already, and if you learned something new by all these things which we added with the data binding today. So if you load your application, and you should be able to see all these data in here. We added, what did we do today? Today, this was more or less a read-only application for you, but we created a model. Let me just in here. We created a model with the field definitions, and we created a store that goes, this one is singular, and the store is plural. The same name, just with plural. And this one gets the definition from the model. We tell the store, as soon as you get created, please load the data from my URL. And once the data return, grab the data, and I already know it's a JSON, please read it as a JSON and create the different records from that. Then please add a sorter. I don't want to have any order, I want to have a specific order. The first name shall be have a certain order, and we can define that by saying property and just adding the direction, and that shall be descending or ascending, whatever you would like to have. Then we want to have a filter, and the filter shall have a property, and I want to, whatever value, if the value of the first name contains an AL, so it's alike, then show me that value, otherwise filter them and don't do that. And that's our definition of a store. As soon as my list gets created, it creates the view model. And what did I do in here? I wanted to click this. So the view model. And the view model shall create a store of the type coworkers. And this really is not the definition. As soon as the list gets created, the model gets created, and the controller gets created. And all this by adding to the app.js the main view. If I wouldn't add it in here, let's just try that and run this. We do not have a main view, so we get nothing. The main view is not created, the list is not created, and so on. Now we are creating on launch, on before launch, which we just learned. On before launch, we are creating the main view, which is the main. And with the creation of that, all the items get created. And from that, the text field gets created and so on. But the main list gets created, and the main list creates the view model and the controller and so on. So this creates the store, the model, and so on. So this is exactly what we were looking for today. So this time we delved into its contents of XJS. We created a simple application. In this exercise, I explained some critical bits of knowledge, like defining a class, xtype, the dependencies of when what gets created, and we created our first event. We created our application and learned how the classes were dynamically loaded. It's not... Oh, I missed that, did I? I wanted to show you exactly. Let me get this, rerun this, go in here, network, and you can see my list gets loaded, my coworkers gets loaded. So all these things. So in the beginning, there's a lot of different things that we don't care about. Down here, you can see we created the model, we created the store, we created the list, list control, list model, main, and so on, and our app.js. So these get loaded dynamically because we are using them. What's happening here? XJS will figure out before loading. In the app.js, it says, load me all my data from the PB namespace. And all these data are from my PB namespace, so they are loaded, as you can see in here. So we rendered our application and learned how our classes are dynamically loaded, and we saw how to run our application. Next time, we will begin our journey into the heart of XJS, beginning with a deeper look into the components lifecycle, and we will talk about the various layouts in the framework. That will definitely set the foundation for you to understand how everything works together. So I hope you liked today's session. And if so, it would be awesome if you could leave a subscription. And so the next session will be most likely next Monday. Please leave an abo so that you get informed upfront when I will have the next session. And thanks for taking part in this. Feel free to leave a comment with what you liked, what you did not like. If you did not like anything, before you leave a thumbs down, please leave me a comment and probably I can solve that. I hope to get more and more into the direction what you would like to see. So far, I got comments that you would like to see more about data binding, which we started today with, and which we definitely will delve deeper into. Okay, have a great day.